But it's really hard as women to then reveal those parts of yourself and ask for more and ask for what you need and say that, this is something that makes me feel whole. It makes me feel like my best self, and it's not something that you've experienced with me yet, but this is a part of myself that I think got a little lost in this phase of my life. But thinking back to all my phases, I know that this is part of myself that I want to keep. And I hope that you can accept that, allowing yourself to also accept that that is who you are and not bury it down because you're afraid that someone won't accept you or won't appreciate it. Welcome to the Blue Rose Podcast, your dose of confidence to live a bold life. Here I share insights from my own journey and dive into the stories of women in the outdoors and athletics who are fiercely getting after life. Hi guys, how's it going? Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. Super grateful that you guys are here today. I was recently interviewed on a dear friend of mine's podcast, and it was such a good conversation, and it got me thinking about a lot of things that I honestly haven't really thought about in a while, and it was really fun and enjoyable to be on the other side of the mic. I don't feel like I get interviewed a lot, and so I have a lot of respect for everyone that lets me interview them and just ask them questions, because I kind of felt like I didn't know how to answer a lot of the questions that I was being asked, and it's definitely like on the spot, you don't know the questions before, and so you're really having to think on the spot, and sometimes the hardest question to answer is tell me about yourself. And so thank you to everyone who has let me interview them and ask them that question. But I was on this episode and my friend and I were chatting about identity and the tension between different parts of your identity at different times in your life, how you decide which parts of yourself to keep in different chapters of our life, what we decide that we want to let go of, and what we want to see grow. And so I want to talk about today the idea of like tension between identities, building a home within yourself and wherever you are in whatever phase of life that you're in, and what it means to choose the parts of yourself that are, that you want to come along for the ride, but you don't have to choose them all. So the first piece of this is the tension between two identities, right? So I have always had this like passion and energy and just drive to travel and to get up and to leave everything behind and to start new and to experience and to just immerse myself in different cultures, in different people, in different environments. And then there's also this piece of me that likes being comfortable and settled and home and having friends that are consistent and family nearby. I'm sure that everyone that travels, feels that way and feels that tension sometimes, but it can really clash when you are, going day to day throughout your life and you're consistently kind of having this itch to get up and go and to get up and see the world and to try something new. And it takes a lot of energy and thought to stay where you are, even if where you are is exactly where you want to be and you're not unhappy and nothing is going wrong. But there's just this part of your personality that feels the need to get up and disrupt and to try new things. And none of those things are bad. I have an easier time getting up and leaving and trying new things than I do staying in the same place. Whereas like a lot of people have the opposite problem where it's like they love being in one place, they love having a home, but they have a harder time getting out of their comfort zone and maybe like getting up and booking that plane ticket. There's this tension between those identities. And what I've realized is that that is who I am, and that is never going to go away. And I get to choose which parts of my personality I want to let lead the boat for right now. And so right now I am choosing to let the more stable, practical, settled Becca lead the boat. But, for 4 or 5 years, I let the more spontaneous, unpredictable, no plan Becca lead the boat. And right now, in this period of my life, I'm choosing to let the other Becca row the boat because there are goals and things that I have and things that I dream about that I don't necessarily think spontaneous Becca and whimsical Becca would make come to light. I think that sometimes there's parts of our personalities that maybe aren't the answers that we're looking for and aren't the answers to the problems that we're trying to solve. And it's okay to let parts of yourself kind of fall away while you are trying to do something different or new or something out of your norm, and that is okay. And so with that, I've realized that like there are pieces of yourself in every phase of your life that you can keep and that maybe you should keep. And so, an example I love to give is like, right, finding a home when you are traveling. The home is within yourself. And I think that that is the biggest lesson I learned from traveling is that there is no place that is home. You are home for yourself, and the people you are with can become your home, but it's not necessarily about like the building you're in or the actual location you're in. It's about who you are and understanding that as like a deeper version of home. I have learned to find home. An example I always give is I love moving my body. And so no matter where I have traveled or where I have gone, moving my body in some capacity has always come with me. The first thing I do whenever I moved to a new country was go find a gym. I would always just have one place that was like, okay, this is my routine. Like, this is part of my routine already. I put down a single route and it is going to the gym, or it is finding my favorite park that I can go for a run at. And that immediately makes me feel like myself, which makes me feel like I'm at home. And so, with that, exercise and movement and taking care of myself and my body have come with me through all the phases of my journey. I've always found a way to move my body, whether or not it looked the same. For example, when I was living in Switzerland, I didn't have a gym. And so moving my body looked like hiking all the time and yoga and running and doing more HIIT workouts. And when I was in Spain, I got really into yoga. And so I was going to yoga 5 times a week and I did Zumba classes. And so while the movement has looked different, the movement has come with me through all aspects of my life. These are very light-hearted examples of just things that I guess are like habits that I've taken with me throughout my life. But you can also do that with pieces of your personality. And so when you're with new people, inevitably you start to shift and change and adapt to those people. And so when I was in Switzerland, it's like I am living with the most down to earth, thoughtful, spiritual human beings I have ever met. Therefore, I become more spiritual and slow living and mindful, and I adapt to that, right? If I'm living with someone that is like super anxious and type A, I will become like that. And so we start to adapt to the people that we surround ourselves with. And the interesting part about this that we talked about was a relationship, right? And so when you're with a partner, you inevitably start to kind of bend and shift and mold to what a partnership could look like for the two of you. And it's very different than what you experience when you are alone. And it's very different than what you experience if you're living with friends, right? So all three of these buckets are so different. And you kind of have to weave the thread of who you are within all of those time periods. And so with that, I like to believe that there is a bubble phase, right? Like, say you just moved in by yourself and you are just like, this is the best thing ever. I am solo. I get the whole apartment to myself. I get to cook dinner. super loud with music and I'm having a blast, all the things, right? And you're like, this is the best time ever. I like to believe that there's like a bubble phase where you're like, I am just going to soak this up. I am going to squeeze every last drop out of this moment because who knows how long this moment is going to last, right? And so then it's the same as like college, right? When you're living with your friends and there's this period where you're just like, this is so awesome. Like, I love living with my friends. I'm going to go out for 2 a.m. French fries because I can. And we're going to play Just Dance because it's awesome. And we're all going to sit around and play board games and do all the things because why not? And it's the same thing as when you get into a relationship. The first like year, you're just like, I feel like you're in that bubble phase of all you want to do is hang out with that person. You don't care what you're doing. You're trying their hobbies, they're trying yours. But then there comes a point where you start to realize that maybe there's been pieces of yourself that you've kind of left behind. There's been pieces of yourself that you've maybe forgotten about or haven't prioritized. And that's okay. I feel like I need to re-say that, like that is okay. And I think that is supposed to happen. I think we are supposed to get lost in whatever moment we are in and just immerse ourselves and enjoy it. And there's this pressure of like, I need to remain the same. Like, this is who Becca is, and Becca must remain the same throughout every phase of my journey, right? Like, we constantly put this pressure on ourselves to be the whole version of who we are all the time. But the whole version of who I am when I'm living alone versus when I'm living with friends versus when I'm living with a partner are so different. And what I've learned is that you can take pieces of all of those journeys and mesh them into the person that you are choosing to be. So you come out of this bubble, right? You come out of this bubble phase and you start to realize like, for me, this is an example for myself. I have always loved getting up at 5 a.m. I know that is not something that a lot of people love, but I love being up before the sun rises. I love getting my workout in early. I just love the hours from like 5 to 8 a.m. when no one else is around, no one is awake. I don't have to turn my phone on. And it is just this like blissful morning for me. And it is my favorite time of the day, right? And so when I was living alone, I was always getting up at 5 a.m. Like I had a 10 p.m. bedtime, 5 a.m. wake up time, and it was the best. When I was living with roommates, like still, I was still getting up at 5 a.m. And obviously that didn't happen all the time because I would stay up maybe later hanging out with my roommates. And slowly I've started to realize that in this new phase I am in, I have kind of let that part of myself go a bit where I haven't been waking up at 5 a.m. I've been pushing it to like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. more than I would have liked to. And so I've kind of come to this period where I'm like, I liked that Becca. I liked her and I want her back. So I'm going to go figure out how to get her back because I liked her. And she's still in there. It's just she took a little detour and she wanted to enjoy the heck out of the bubble phase that she was in. And that is okay. But eventually, again, you come out of that phase and you start to realize like, yeah, this is a piece of myself that I'm missing. And with that, like this is something I'm currently in the process of. Like I'm on day 2 of waking up at 5 a.m. again. And I'm not going to lie, it's a little hard because I haven't been doing it. But I have found that this piece of my personality has allowed me to make beautiful connections in ways that I didn't think would happen. So, right, like if I identify with like getting up at 5 a.m., like this is my favorite thing to do, I'm going to do it no matter what. So when I was traveling, I still made a pretty big effort to get up at 5 in the morning. And when I was living at this hostel, my favorite thing to do was to get up at 5 in the morning, to walk down. There was like these couches outside. I would make a morning coffee and I would sit there and I would watch the sunrise every single morning. And slowly, other people started to join me. One of my friends in particular started to join me every single morning. And I remember him being like, the first time you invited me to come down to watch sunrise with you, I felt like I was missing something when I didn't come. And then he started to come every single morning. And that is how we built like such a beautiful friendship, was this morning where we had this hour, 2 hours where we were just like sitting and chatting and watching the sunrise together. And it was such a beautiful experience. And so if you look at that experience, it was a slow morning, it was relaxing, it was amazing. But my morning by itself when I am alone looks so much different because I am getting up and I am writing and I'm going to the gym and I'm making breakfast and I'm reading or I'm doing whatever, right? But it's maybe not as like slow as it was in that phase of my life, and that's okay. But the thing is that I liked getting up at 5 a.m. in every phase, and whether or not it looks the same in every phase, that's okay. And so I hope I'm not losing you here. The point is that, like, right, we go through this bubble phase and then we start to be like, okay, which parts of myself am I missing? Which parts of myself am I okay letting go of? And which parts of myself am I not willing to give up on because I loved those parts of myself? So I love, and so, and as cheesy as that example sounds, is right, like you're on this wave, call it life, and you have your core identity. You have who you are as a human being, right? And then you have all these opportunities along your journey. And slowly you start to say no to some, you start to meet different people, and then you start to bend and mold and shift to those opportunities and to those people. And in that phase, that it's like so okay because you're trying things on, you're trying new people out, you're trying new hobbies, you're trying new identities on. And then it comes to this process of like, okay, like I tried this thing. Now, which parts of myself am I going to keep and which parts of myself am I going to let go? Like, what did I learn from that? And what do I want to keep? And what do I remember loving from my past phases that I want to keep moving forward with? All of it is just information about yourself and who you are at different phases of your journey, and which parts of you stick, right? The parts of you also that feel really hard, like there's a difference between like discipline and habit building versus like innately who you are. And if you're constantly just like trying to be something that you're not, just leave that part of you behind, because I think that there's so many ways to be in life and there's so many things to try out and to experience, that to really be beholden to these identities that we place on ourselves can be really detrimental to growth and to exploring who you are and letting yourself roam around and ride the wave, if you will. Wow, I feel like I'm being so cheesy right now, but it is your job to decide which parts of yourself you love and which parts of yourself you could do without. And it's kind of like the idea, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but like I really subscribe to this idea of like, I don't love New Year's resolutions, but there was a whole trend, I don't know how many years ago it was and if it's still a thing, but it was like, this is in and this is out, like more of this, less of this. And I think you can do the same thing for your personality, whenever you feel necessary, whenever you feel like, okay, I'm coming out of this like bubble phase and I'm, dipping down and trying to understand who I am and what I want, and then, coming back up, right? And I think you can do that with your identity of being like, yes, more spontaneity, more 5 a.m. wake up times, more alone time, right? And less bending to someone else, less doing things I don't want to do, less compromising my beliefs and my values. And I think as women, what is so hard is, right, we get into relationships or we get into friendships, and when we inevitably do lose ourselves. Like, it is a process that happens. We inevitably lose parts of ourselves. And I don't know if there's a way around it, because you do become the people you spend time with. It's amazing to learn and to grow from them. But what happens as women is, I feel like we let ourselves lose our identity because we don't want to be annoying or a burden or whatever it is we're afraid of. We all have different fears, but we don't want to rock the boat. Like, because, for example, if you're in a relationship And for the first year you've been dating, you never got up at 5 a.m. when your partner was at your place because you didn't want to. You just wanted to hang out and like get cozy. Well, it's kind of hard to then reform that habit and show them, like, this is who I am. Like, I know that you haven't experienced her, but this is who I am. And now I'm going to show you who I am. And there's like this relearning that goes on within a partnership that's like, oh, like I didn't see this before. Like I didn't see this as your whole identity or like who you are and what you do every day because you weren't together every day. You were only together 2 or 3 times a week or whatever it was. And you were so new into your relationship that like pieces of yourself that no one sees all the time weren't surfaced. And so then when they start to surface, you have a job and a duty to yourself to be like, okay, this is who I am, this is who I am, and I'm going to show you who I am. And I hope that you accept and value me the same because this is who I am and this is what I need as a person. This is how I feel like myself. And as women, it's so hard to. I like to think of relationships as like letting people down slowly, right? Like no one is perfect. We all have flaws. And, as you're deeper into like friendships, relationships, you start to realize those things. And all you can do is hope and hope that your partner accepts you and accept your partner for everything that they are. But it's really hard as women to then reveal those parts of yourself and ask for more and ask for what you need and say that, this is something that makes me feel whole. It makes me feel like my best self. And it's not something that you've experienced with me yet, but this is a part of myself that I think got a little lost in this phase of my life. But thinking back to all my phases, I know that this is part of myself that I want to keep. And I hope that you can accept that. As a woman, allowing yourself to also accept that that is who you are and not bury it down because you're afraid that someone won't accept you or won't appreciate it. Because the last thing that you want to do is be like inside, just like slowly dying because parts of yourself are disintegrating and you're not allowing them to resurface. The point is to reclaim and to find these pieces of yourself throughout your journey, and they're always changing. And that is also the hard part, is that like you are constantly on a wave and you are constantly moving. And there are pieces of yourself that are going to continuously get left behind, and then you're going to find them again and you're going to pick them up and you're going to move forward. And then there's other pieces that you're going to leave behind, and that is okay. And I think that's part of the journey. And I think that balance is an absolute myth because there is no balance. Like you kind of are out of balance depending on what it is you're trying to do. So allowing yourself to be out of balance and to just go with where you are in life, but being mindful of letting pieces go at certain times, but also accepting that you're letting pieces go and knowing that you're going to circle back to them eventually and that you get to choose what parts of yourself make up your home. You get to decide which identities, which characteristics, which hobbies, which parts of you belong to you at every phase of your life. And that can change as often as you want it to, as long as you understand that it is your choice. So with that, guys, I want to leave you with this question of what part of yourself are you choosing to keep right now? And I encourage you to just do little reflections during different phases of your life and write down all the things about you that you just love and that you want to keep doing and that make you feel like you're at home and make you feel whole and like who you are. And write down everything that doesn't make you feel good, things that don't make you feel like yourself, things that you're like, you know what, that was so last year and I don't need that anymore. Allow yourself to answer that question of like, who do I want to be or who am I choosing to be right now? And sit with that and allow yourself to accept it and to move forward in that moment, knowing that you can always change your mind. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'm so glad you are here. Please hit that subscribe button. If you got anything from this, please send it to a friend. And again, I'm so grateful for you guys. I'm so grateful that you are here listening to me chat, and I will talk to you guys next week. And that's a wrap on today's Dose of Confidence. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If you found inspiration here, please share it with a friend. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss an episode. Sending lots of love your way. Until next time, this is Becca encouraging you to live your boldest life.